As far as I'm concerned, everything in the negative syndrome does not exist. If it exists anywhere in this room tonight, it has to be a figment of your imagination, not mine. Does this make sense? In other words, it's real if you believe it's real. If you do not believe it's real, is it real? Couldn't exist at all. I'll give you an illustration. Let's take the area of suspicion. The mental disorder for this is called paranoia. We have a man, he's in this house, and he's nailed all the windows shut. He's convinced that finally they're going to come and get him. He knows it now. In other words, he knows there's no use to run anymore. This is his last chance. Now, you go up and knock on the door, and you tell him that you had better come out because there's a fire in the attic. By the way, the fire in the attic happens to be reality. But what is reality to the paranoid? Could you be telling him the truth? He says, you're just telling me that so I'll come out so you can get me. So a little later on I say, well, can't you smell the smoke? He says, I smell a little bit of smoke. You probably threw a smoke bomb in there to really fool me. Now when he stays in this particular house until he burns up, has he proven to us that that was reality? To who? To himself. Was it reality to us? Now, can you understand then in the negative syndrome whether it's real or whether it's not real depends entirely on whether you think it's real. Now, by the way, if you think it's real, I want to tell you how real it is. It will kill you. Now, this is a hard thing for people to understand. How can it be real enough to kill you and not be real at all? I'll leave you to figure that out yourself. I don't know the answer to that. My answer to it is, wherever I may ramble, whatever be my goal, keep my eye upon the donut and not upon the hole. To me, below the line is the hole, above the line is the donut. I asked a group of students once, is the hole real? And one guy told me it is a real hole. The hole is not real. By the way, 2/3 of our population believe it's real. If all of your affectional fields from birth till now averaged out into a negative syndrome, would you believe it's real? The most real thing in the world to you would be what we have just discussed as what exists in the negative syndrome. And if somebody was up here in the top of a positive aura as a Pollyanna, would you really think they were crazy? Every value system they have would be foreign to you, would it not? And you couldn't stand them, could you? I mean, they would be kind of ridiculous at times, wouldn't they? Have you ever heard people say, I hate brown bread? They're destroying themselves by simple terminology. Say, I prefer white bread, but I like brown bread. Because the people who say they hate brown bread do not hate it, really. You put them on a desert island and leave them there for a little bit and give them a loaf of brown bread and they'll love it. But as long as I believed I hated brown bread, would I eat it? But the minute I realized that I prefer white here, I like brown here, I found out a most unusual thing. I find myself eating it with no qualms at all. And I find I really do like it, but I still prefer white bread. But have I got the whole bread up where it's real? But if you say, I hate brown bread, you've put bread down here where it's not real, and then every time you put something down here that's not real, that is real, you destroy yourself. Anytime you build up a warfare, like I know a Volkswagen owner that actually went to a printer and had little things printed, stamp out Cadillacs. Does it help? All right, now, what they did, they tried to put Cadillacs to indifference, and it couldn't, and Cadillacs got back up here to hatred. Now, will that destroy you? When you're out spending all your evenings and Saturdays and Sundays pasting these stickers on cars, you are destroying yourself. Really, is there anything wrong with any car that's made? You see, what happens is, it's the smallness of the person. But if you are small, you have to justify the car that you have by doing what to everything else? You ever heard a person say, this is the only city to live in? Well, your city's no good. Anytime a person's like this, they're small. Now, could they grow up? I come to a simple conclusion that every time I go below the line, I'm committing suicide. And I realized that I happen to love myself very much, and I didn't want to destroy myself anymore, and I was tired of negative chemistry, so I decided that I would not go below the line again. So I found that every kind of weather we have is delightful, regardless of what it might do. Every kind of food is wonderful, all the people are wonderful, and I don't care how much proof you give me, I won't accept it. Whereas if there's a way to not even listen to it, it's better, because when I listen to it, then I have to fight it, to overcome it. I think if you really understand what it means to go below the line, will you do it? You realize that that's an expensive price to pay to be wise. Remember, did Eve get wisdom or knowledge? Knowledge. Make sure you separate the two. Wisdom will not kill you, but knowledge will. Knowledge of good will not kill you, but knowledge of evil will kill you. All right, we're all convinced it isn't here anymore. But I think one thing that's nice to know is that it's very logical. And when you meet some neurotics, it'll help you understand a little more that it's the most normal, natural thing to do if you want to have knowledge of evil. In other words, if you want the pride of having the knowledge of evil, then this is the most logical conclusions that you will ever arrive at. Because we're going to go up the other way into the positive order, and you'll find out as we go this way, there's nothing logical. Every step is illogical. So if you're dealing with illogical people, where are they going to end up? Death. A horrible thing to tell you? All right, let's go into the actual positive aura and find out what it's made out of. The first layer will be acknowledgement. In other words, I will acknowledge that this particular thing is good. If we're talking about a human being, I will be acknowledging basically that he's human. Now, when I'm talking about a relationship of a wife and a husband, her acknowledgement will be that he is Lord and Master. Now, is that logical? There's no rhyme, no reason for it, no basis for it. It's contrary to everything she's taught. It's contrary to her beliefs. In other words, the acknowledgement always acknowledges what the person or thing rightfully is. We say that humans are rightfully human. Then acknowledgement simply means I acknowledge them as human. Now as I go a little higher, the next A stands for actually accepting it. In other words, not only do I say that this is a qualified item, I now accept this item as something pleasing to me. Then the next A will be approval. In other words, now I say it's all right, I accept it, and I approve of it. Have you ever heard people say, I'll acknowledge you as a human being, but I don't approve of the thing you're doing? Now, is it logical to go ahead and approve of them? No. It's easier to accept you as a human being than to approve of you as a human being. And then after I approve of you, the next thing I'm going to do is to be grateful or show appreciation for what you're doing. Now, is it a logical thing to show appreciation? No. Do you really say thank you spontaneously? Hardly ever. When you say thank you or express gratitude, does it require thought? Let's just think for a moment. In other words, when somebody really says, I really like that dress you have on, or thank you so much for doing this for me, it takes thought and it takes patience. It's not something that comes out spontaneously. In other words, it's not natural to show actual appreciation. To show appreciation, do I have to figure out what you're doing apart from my world? In other words, I have no appreciation for you if I'm in my own shoes, do I? To show appreciation for you, I have to go into your shoes to realize you went out of your way to do this and do this and do this for me. Does that require a lot of thought? And if I don't give it that thought, will I say thank you? So we say then even appreciation is something that doesn't come on a normal pattern. Now, if you understand what a telephone is supposed to do, could you acknowledge it as a telephone? Now, some people get disgusted and rip it off the wall. You have stopped acknowledging it for its purpose. Then I actually accept it. I approve of it. Then finally, am I really grateful by appreciating it? And I realize I pick up the telephone and I've just traveled 30 miles in 3 minutes, accomplished my business, and returned in 1 minute. I say that's a wonderful piece of equipment to have in my home. So we say then that these A's blend into each other. In other words, appreciation in its first elementary stages is nothing more than a lot of approval. The next A is admiration. I can only thank for so long, and then I begin to admire. By the way, the minute I admire something, I'm going contrary to myself now. And then after admiration comes adoration. And I can prove to you that that's not a logical pattern of behavior, because the minute I say that you should adore this glass, how do you feel? Tell me the real reaction. You should adore the weather we've had today. You should adore this lamp. You should adore this table. Every time I say that, what comes in now? Idolization means there's only one. If I believed that the rose was the only rose in the world, there was nothing else comparable to it, and it had the characteristics of deity. By the way, could a teenager do this with a car? Then is he destroying himself? Could the car be his God? Right, but that has nothing to do with adoring a car. He could adore the car at the same time be thanking God for giving it to him. But if he idolized the car, he wouldn't be thanking God for anything. He would be worshiping the car. In other words, if you idolize the car is an end in itself. If I adore the car, I can have all kinds of other feelings. In other words, could I adore a donut? I should hope so. Adoration means that I'm giving it every bit of feeling I can possibly give it at this moment. Our seventh one will be infinite affection. The only difference between infinite affection and adoration is infinite affection continues forever, and adoration is an act to do it now. Therefore, we say that if I increase in adoration, what happens? It turns into affection. In other words, adoration over a long enough period of time is affection. And I end up with 7 A's. Now, if we wanted to look at the substance of this, we could do it by examining a continuum. Let's say this is a continuum, and this is hot water, and this is cold water. And in between are degrees of lukewarm water. Or we could say that this is the color white, and this is the color black, and these are shades of gray, and the common substance is color. In other words, we're saying then a continuum is polar extremes with a common substance of varying degrees between the extremes. All right, let's use our positive aura. This end would be acknowledgement. This end would be affection. The different degrees would be the other 5 A's, and the common substance is love. Could I have different intensities of love? Right, in other words, the minute I cross this line, I'm loving, but it's kind of a lukewarm type thing. There's not much intensity in my love right here, but it's still love. But as I go up to the very top of the positive aura, what happens to the intensity of the love? It becomes very intense. In other words, it begins to mean something to me at the top. Therefore, everything in the positive aura is love. I admit that when I barely cross the rational line, in the first stages of acknowledgement, there's not much love. But the substance is love. Therefore, we say the positive aura is anything that's warm, pleasing, gives comfort, gives a sense of well-being. And the reverse is true in the negative syndrome. You know, why don't you just lose your fear about being carried away with things? I mean, why should we tonight have a fear that we're going to get carried away with something? If I were to write a prescription for everyone, that's probably what would be the best thing for us tonight. Find something you can get you carried away with anyway. And now the secret of life is to get everything in your personage all of your material belongings, your children, your spouse, your employees, past the 6th A. Now, we have another type of decision-making tonight. It's not based heavily on your value system. It's based more on alternatives, with neither alternative being bad. So, let's assume that you are at point A. In other words, this means all of the affectional fields of your entire lifetime averaged together from birth until now puts you at point A. We say then you're a rather positive person. Now at point A in time you have been given a problem. So we say that as you're progressing on a horizontal line, do you have any change in emotion? A vertical line would be a rapid change in emotion because our intensity of emotion is on the y-axis. So we say that a line that is horizontal over here in the y-axis would have the same intensity of emotion over a given period of time, which would mean there would be no expressed emotional change. All right, now as I'm looking at this problem and I'm given my alternatives at point A, I continue until I reach point B. And during this time I have been gathering information. Now, do I gather any negative information? None whatsoever, because both alternatives are good and I could go either way. We say that I'm using the process of discernment, and it looks like the evaluation process which we've already described. But it is not, because when I do go below the line, I am finding information that's in favor of a less desirable solution. Now, will I have frustration between A and B? I should not. In fact, I should have a good feeling because am I doing something constructive? I am gathering information to help me actually discern between two basic alternatives. Now, when I reach point B, I have gathered all of the information available. Now, it's real simple. All I have to do at point B is make a decision, and I make a decision for the better, which will put me which way? Up. I will go up into the positive aura and increase my emotional health. So we say that this is a normal decision which occurs all of the time, which has nothing negative in it, and it simply means that there are two alternatives. I can use this illustration by comparing it on a road that I'm going down the road and I come to forks. One fork goes to the coast, one fork goes to the mountains. I am going to actually decide which way I want to go with no negative information. Everything's wonderful about this, except if I should happen to stay at the fork. Because we are plotting time on the x-axis, right? And can I stay at point B? No, because I'm in the process of time, which means I have to go past point B. Now, we know if I make the decision, I can go up into the positive aura. If I don't make the decision at point B, where do I have to go? Indecisiveness is negative or positive? Negative. So once I go past B without a decision, I begin a downward trip. The higher you are in a positive aura, would you have more distance between B and the rational line? Right now, if you're a very positive person, can you actually last longer in a state of indecisiveness? Well, if you're very positive, you might even go a whole week before you crack up. But to the degree that I have increased the distance between B and the rational line, I have that much positivism I can use up. Now, I want you to know, will you be using it up how fast? Well, time is going, isn't it? And I'm in a state of indecisiveness, so we say that as time goes, I am going continuously down until I cross the rational line and go into a negative syndrome. Then how crucial is it to make a decision at point B? You've heard expressions, he who hesitates is lost. Where is he lost to? Negative syndrome, there's no question about it. Another expression is, it's better to make a wrong decision than no decision at all. For example, if the better of the two alternatives was to point C, and the lesser of the two alternatives was to point D, and if I didn't make a decision, I would be going to point E, which is worse? To make a wrong decision at point D, or to make no decision and go to point E. It's interesting, we have these little expressions like, he who hesitates is lost, and we wonder what they really mean. And they're so final in their judgment that we know they're not true. Are they really true? Now, let's assume that once I have failed to make a decision until I'm at point E, have I lost all of my facilities now? I have burned up my positive aura in a state of indecisiveness, and I will continue. This line has a tendency to level off and then drop drastically. Because after I've gone out a little ways from point B, I realize I'm in a predicament. I realize that I haven't made my decision, and I have lost ground, and I'm losing ground fast, and I normally panic. And this is almost like an airplane. If you get it in too steep a dive, what can you do? You crash. All right, I want to look down here at the spot where we crash. What's the bottom of our diagram? Indifference. Now, have you ever in your life failed to make a decision when you should, and then finally made a decision to get away from it all? In other words, you finally say, I don't care now which way it is. I just want out. Then how do you feel toward the thing you should have made a decision for? In other words, your affectional field for that one thing that you should have made a decision for is now indifference. Now, could you tell me where is the best place in this diagram to make a decision? B. And there really, basically, is no other place to make it. B is the point where I have gathered all of the information. All right, now let's go through the illustration, and let's assume that you make a decision at point I in your subconscious, which has all the information for the decision, decides, you suppose that's where he's going to make the next decision. Now, it so happened that the subconscious supplied you with the information at point K. In other words, it was all set up to give the information at point K, but you did what? You made the decision at point I. Now, what kind of a decision will you make without the information from the subconscious? It will always be wrong. Because the conscious brain can't make a decision because it has no knowledge, no facts to make the decision. So, you get ready to make another decision, and the subconscious says, you know, he made it at I last time. I think we should probably predict that he'll do it at J this time. So the subconscious gets all ready to feed you the information at point J. And today you happen to have had a good meal and you feel a little better put together psychologically, so you hang on to point L. And you make your decision at point L, and what happened? The information was given to you at point J. What kind of decision again? Wrong. So the next day, you're irritable, you just can't stand anything, and you make the decision at I, and the subconscious has given the information to K. Now the subconscious is doing the most logical, mathematical, correct thing possible. It's splitting the difference with you every time. But now, if you're an erratic person and you make decisions wherever your emotions tell you, and by the way, these decisions we're making at I, J, K, and L, or even E or indifference, are they based on your emotional level at the time? Will that always be different? Then will the subconscious never supply you the information at the right time? So all it does the rest of your life is follow you around trying to second guess you. Once in a while it'll happen to be right. You'll make the most wonderful decision, you'll feel great for a day or two. But will it always be by accident? I want to show you a method tonight that I would recommend. Let's assume you've been doing this at random procedure. Now, the next decision you have to make, I want you at point B to make it. All right, now your subconscious will have already be set up for point L. Will you make a wrong decision? Absolutely. Enjoy it. Because you're doing the most wonderful thing. You're programming the subconscious to do what now? Give you information at B. All right, now the second decision you have to make, where are we going to make it again? Point B. And again, the subconscious will split the difference, so it'll make it at point J. So all's well and good. You made another wrong decision. The third decision you have to make, we're going to do what again? Point B. And the subconscious will split the difference and give us the information at point I. The next decision, it'll split the difference between B and I. The next decision, it'll keep splitting the difference until eventually the most glorious thing's going to happen. You're going to reach point B and make a decision, and what's going to happen? It's going to be right. And will it be right from then on? As long as you keep programming the subconscious to deliver the information at point B, then you'll be making all of your decisions right at point B from that moment on. I think it's the most marvelous system. It takes sometimes 3 or 4 weeks before you get the subconscious kicking you the information at point B. Now, to prove to you that decision-making is a subconscious function, I'll give you an illustration. I had a class at college that I taught on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, a 3-hour class. And I had another class that was 3 hours, which met 2 hours on Tuesday and 1 hour on Thursday. It was the same material in both classes. It came time for an examination. The Monday, Wednesday, and Friday class, I gave them an hour examination. And it took the whole hour. They had to work hard. Now, I happened to like the Tuesday, Thursday class. They were a little more submissive, a little more cooperative, and I felt a little more lenient. In other words, I wanted to do something nice for them. So we met on Tuesday, and what do you suppose I let them do? Take the whole 2 hours for the test. I thought, that'll help them do better than the Monday, Wednesday, Friday class. I was grading the exams, and I found out that the Monday, Wednesday, Friday class did better. Now, can you imagine this? The Tuesday, Thursday class had twice the length of time. So as we were laying the key on the exam with the holes punched in the cardboard, I happened to notice on several exams that everywhere there was a hole where we were marking wrong, there was a eraser smudge mark underneath. This is interesting. Let's carry this a little further. So I had the grader grade the whole exam, not with the key, but with smudge marks. And I found out they got the same letter grade. Oh, there were a few exceptions in the whole class. But for the most part, they had the same letter grade if we graded the smudge marks wrong or if we put the key on. Now, when I looked at the Monday, Wednesday, Friday class, there were no smudge marks. They didn't have time to go back and change the right answers to wrong answers. But on the Tuesday, Thursday class, they had actually done just as well in the test as the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but what had they done the extra hour? They'd gone back and the conscious brain had talked them out of what the subconscious had told them was right.